Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. My name is Chris Corey. I'm the principal here at LiveTake Inc. And this week's webinar is on how to use influence to increase sales conversions, and more specifically, your HVAC sales conversions. So why don't we get right into the webinar and set some expectations for you. So about this webinar itself, here's what you can expect to get from this session. So the first thing is we hope to teach you some of the psychology behind consumer decision making. That'll be the starting point, and that'll lay the foundation for everything else that we go through. The second thing that you should get out of this is then how to take that and then start effectively structuring your sales approach. And more specifically, it's structuring that approach around this decision-making psychology. So that's the important feature there. And then finally, taking all of 1 and 2 and then using that to create a sales system that will help your sales numbers. And what I mean by that is something that your sales team can actually use themselves and start modifying themselves to really help them more effectively approach a sales situation in a consumer's home, really specifically. Now, I want to apologize to those that were looking for help on commercial selling directly. I got a call actually today around this one, and this webinar, when you look at the examples, are specifically around residential HVAC sales in the home. However, all of the psychological decision-making framework fits across all of that. So it'll work for both commercial as it will for residential. Not to mention, you can still take the building blocks, or you can see how the building blocks are used to create a sales system to apply to your commercial business as well. But as in terms of the specific examples, they're going to look a lot more like residential sales, because they are. So the starting point here in teaching you about the psychology of persuasion is really all anchored in this particular book. This book is called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. It was written by Robert Cialdini and originally published in 1984. He is the professor of psychology and marketing at Arizona State University. It has since been republished several times. I think the last time was 2006, and that's where I got this revised version. And I have to tell you, this book is really the foundation for all of the psychological thinking that we apply here at LiveTake and that we use with our customers. The reason for that is that I think that he's done a really good job at succinctly pulling together an easy way of digesting how you can use influence to curb consumer behavior. And I've read a lot of books around this subject and some more modern writings, and I got to tell you, you can boil it back down to the findings in this book. And I think this is encompassing enough, if not all encompassing, and it's a great foundational piece. I urge you, if you have the time, pick this book up, give it a read. I think you can really start applying the learnings in it. Now, one of the reasons why for its believability is that it's actually based on real-world research over a 3-year period, where Robert Cialdini and his team actually went undercover in a lot of sales organizations, things like car dealerships, telemarketing firms, so on and so forth, things that were really, or companies that were really, really sales-based, and that's where they came up with the results. So it's based on real data, because they took how consumers were behaving and when they started making positive decisions, and that's where they pulled their inferences from. Finally, it's very succinctly put together in that it boils down to 6 simple influencing principles. So all you have to remember are 6 principles. And if there's anything that you get out of this entire webinar, at the end of it, and I'll list those six principles, make sure that you learn those 6 principles, learn them in depth, and then that is what you're going to want to apply to your sales approach across anything. And also, you could probably even use it in your personal life, just in terms of how you interact with people if you are trying to sway their decision on something. So what I'd like to do next is I'm actually going to break away from the presentation quickly, because I stumbled upon this company called Read It For Me, which is readitfor.me. And what they do is they do 10 to 12 minute book reviews in an animated way with some video. And what they do is then they'll summarize the book for you. And if you're not into reading, it's a great place to go. I did find on their library there that they do have the original publication of Influence. I think then it was called Weapons of Psychology or Weapons of Persuasion. So it's a little bit different in terms of how it summarizes the results, but the nuts and bolts are all the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that video for you quickly. It's a 12-minute video. Let them do the book review for you, and then I'll rejoin the webcast, and then we'll get into the specific selling of HVAC using some of these principles. Okay, so I'll break away for a minute here. Enjoy the video, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. So I hope that was helpful in some way, just at least to give you a background about the book itself and whether or not you might want to do some self-study and pick up a copy. So like I said, that was the original publication of that. In the revised version, the one that I'm referencing here, I think in that version they showed 8 principles. They boiled it down now to really 6. So let me just review those 6 principles for you one more time. So the first one is reciprocity, and that's that people tend to return a favor. This is that whole thing around free samples and then having the person giving you the free samples, then asking if you want to buy a box or a bottle or whatever. So there is a certain anxiety that we feel as humans when somebody gives us something that we feel indebted to them somewhat. And that is this whole phenomenon of reciprocity. Number 2 is commitment and consistency. So if people commit orally or in writing to an idea or goal, they are more likely to honor that commitment because of establishing that idea or goal as being congruent with their self-image. It's a lot of words, but what that boils down to is that if somebody says that they are a certain way, whether they are or not, if you go further on in that conversation and start bringing up things that either contradict that or support that, they're always going to go on the supporting side. They become entrenched with that statement. So an example with that around that might be if you ask somebody if you consider yourself environmentally friendly or to care about the environment, they say yes. And then you start talking about energy efficient equipment or things like that. It's more difficult for that person to say that they don't want to upgrade inefficient equipment to more efficient equipment when they've already stated that they're committed to the environment. And that will be because of this psychological principle around commitment and consistency. The third one is social proof. So here, people will do things that they see other people are doing. This is where the term birds of a feather flock together come from. It's around this principle of social proof. And this is really where customer testimonials come in. The reason why customer testimonials or user stories are so powerful is because of social proof, in that people want to do those things that they see other people doing. Number 4 is authority. So people will tend to obey authority figures. So people that you think have expert knowledge, you will tend to listen to what they have to say. So if a doctor tells you to take some pills or take some action, you'll probably take that action. Whether that doctor's actually an expert in that might not be. So something might be that is a doctor an expert in, say, exercise. But if they told you that you should do some type of exercise and then explain those exercises, you would probably take that advice. Yet they weren't really trained in that. If I took then number 5 here as being liking. So liking is that people are easily persuaded by other people that they like. This is what the whole Tupperware party was based around. The idea that if you got your friends to invite you over to their house and then try to start selling you this Tupperware, seeing it was coming from a friend, that you would be more likely in buying it, or at least feel obliged to buy it. And that worked for a very long time. The other thing that falls into liking is attractive people. So the fact that you see all of these models selling products, that has to do with liking. Because you like that person or like the way that they look, you are more apt to believe what that person's saying and perhaps buy that person's product. Number 6, and the final one then, is scarcity. And that's that perceived scarcity will generate demand. So the less there is of something, the more people tend to want that something. So these are the 6 key principles. These are the 6 takeaways you should take from this webinar. If anything, memorize this component of it, research these a little bit further, and see how you can apply them to your business. Okay, so let's move right into then really specific, the residential HVAC sales process. So why don't we kind of map out how that starts out, and let's start with the customer and let's look at the customer's expectations. This is what I like to call the HVAC shopper's dilemma. So what does this look like from a customer's perspective when they want to buy a new furnace or air conditioner? So the first thing is they're in a situation they don't want to be in. You can trust me, nobody wants to volunteer to buy a furnace or air conditioner. They do it out of necessity, because nobody's putting aside a little bit of money every month for a rainy day when I need that new furnace and air conditioner. That's just not how people behave. So because of that, they're already starting off in a situation they don't want to be in, so they're already set on a negative side. The next thing is they can't shop for a solution like other products they buy. Think of anything else that you buy, and then think of the way that we sell furnaces and air conditioners today, and there's not much that's sold this way, where a stranger wants to take about an hour and a half of your time, sit in your home, and then start trying to sell you furnace and air conditioning equipment. That's not normal. So again, because of that, this feels odd to them, and it's a clunky way to enter a sales proposition. Finally, they need to sacrifice time not for a solution, but rather just to find options. So they give up their own precious time. Somebody comes to their home, presents them an option for a furnace or an air conditioner, and then they still have a problem. And if they decide to go ahead, they have to schedule some more time where somebody can actually come by and actually fix that problem for them. So the result of all of this is that you end up with missed expectations. And that's how you're starting the sales process. And that's a hard way to be. It's amazing that in our industry, we're able to actually sell this stuff. That says that people must be in a real pinch when they need to get it, because they're not in the positive mind frame that they would probably be in when shopping for a lot of other goods and services. So how do we combat that? And how do we combat that in the sales system? A system that today I feel doesn't really address this customer low expectation or missed expectation situation. So we need to start by rebuilding credibility, and we rebuild that credibility right at the door. We rebuild that credibility when we get to the home. So let's start first with how many times, if you're running an HVAC company as an example, how many times have you said this? Or if you're working in an HVAC company, how many times have you heard this? I wish my technicians would sell. And the reason we say that is because when a technician does sell, they tend to sell at a very high conversion rate. The reason for that is that they're viewed as experts. They're viewed as experts by the consumer. And the consumer tends to believe what they're saying, so they have a huge amount of credibility. So instead of wishing that your technicians could sell, why don't we try to then change the sales system so that it addresses this issue and actually builds credibility for your sales team or your salesperson at the door? The way we do this is by proving that you physically needed to be at the home. Now, the challenge is that we show up at the home today. Customers not happy about that because they probably just wanted a price over the phone or over the web. We didn't give it to them. So they reluctantly invite you to the home, and then it ends up at this 2-hour sales pitch where the customer the whole time is probably feeling, well, you just wanted to get me to sit in front of you and actually listen to your spiel, knowing that I wouldn't listen to it if I didn't have to commit this time to you. So instead, the first thing we should do in the sales process is actually show that you physically had to be at the home. Address that first. So what you want to start your sales process with is the actual heat loss, heat gain calculation to actually size the equipment. And then secondly, you want to go into then measuring up or looking at least the complexity of the installation itself and explain it to the customer like this. So the interaction might go something like this. So hello, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. So before I can actually even get into showing you what your options are, really assessing your situation, there's a few things that we have to do. And the first thing is then, I don't know if you knew this, but the equipment actually comes in different sizes. They might physically look the same, but the power plant within them is different. And the bigger the size required for your particular home, the more expensive the unit is going to be. So what we're going to have to do is we actually have to go around the home and do what's called a heat loss, heat gain analysis to actually determine what size equipment is appropriate for your home. That's part one. Part two is that 50% of the cost is actually in the installation itself, not the equipment. So we'll need to look at the complexity of your particular installation. So I'll have to go down to where the equipment is and actually take some measurements to see what it's going to take to install your unit. While I'm doing that, I can also tell you what the size is of your existing equipment, so you'll have that for a reference. But also, I'll be able to tell you what the existing efficiency is of your equipment. And we might use that information later on in determining whether or not you can see some energy savings, which are some dollar savings, when we look at actually upgrading that equipment to something that's a little more efficient. So why don't we start by doing that? So you probably do these steps today in your sales process. I mean, you must. All I'm saying here is that position it in a way that it's purposeful, and that what you're trying to do is prove that you physically need to be at that home. That the reason why I have to be at the home is not so that I could have your attention while I show you some brochures. The reason I had to be here is because without physically doing these activities, can't possibly give you an accurate price and can't possibly assess your particular situation. So that's the way we need to actually start the sales process to rebuild credibility. When we do that, we demonstrate knowledge that they wouldn't have researched, right? So a typical customer, when they're researching this stuff, is going to research the equipment itself. So they're going to end up on manufacturer sites. They're going to see different brand names. They're going to see maybe perhaps a different model. And all they're going to get is a list of features, right? And that's what they're going to be schooled in. When they look up an HVAC company, what they're going to learn about that company is most likely, if you look at 90% of the websites out there, you're going to see a company saying, hey, we do this stuff. We do it better quality than everybody else. Our people are better trained than everybody else. It all says the same stuff. So that's all that they're going to be able to research. They wouldn't have researched what size equipment do I need for my home, because they probably didn't know it came in different sizes. Or secondly, how complex is my installation based on the layout of my house. So that puts you in a position of authority. You are now an expert. You're an expert in things, in knowledge that they would not have. That's not true when you go into your normal sales spiel and don't position this part of it like that. Instead, they may look at you as peers because you're bringing up information that they may have researched themselves online. So this is really starting to build up that credibility. So always begin that meeting with those physical components. And what you'll do is you'll unlock that behavioral principle number 4 of authority. So now you look more like that technician in that you have that expertise, you have authority. You've hit on that first psychological principle. The next thing to do is to create information giveaways. Now, what I mean by that is turn the information gathering into actual products. So don't connect the sizing of the equipment, the measuring of the installation complexity, the size of their existing equipment, the efficiency of their existing equipment. Don't connect that directly to the sales process itself. Separate the two. So start your meeting then, after you do the physical stuff, start by giving this information as not a part of the sales process. So it looks like this is free information that you're going to keep. As a homeowner, you should have this information and you may be able to use it even if you don't buy from me. You can use that information to check with the other people that are giving you quotes, just to ensure that they're talking about the right stuff. So turn that into an information giveaway for them. Right, so we're breaking the load calculation and efficiency ratings out and packaging that as a type of gift. Then, if you can, create a leave behind on a how-to buying guide, right? So what the buying guide would say is that, hey, here are the things that you should look for when looking to buy a new furnace and air conditioner. Here are the things you want to ask a contractor to ensure that they know what they're doing and that the quality is going to be right, but yada, yada, yada. You can really go to town on this, but you should create a buying guide for that person that you can, again, leave behind for them. And this is all separate from the actual sales presentation. Now, perhaps in your existing sales system, this is all intertwined in the sales presentation itself, but I want you to separate those two so that the person really feels like they're getting something for free. This, my friend, is the free sample. And you're now unlocking reciprocity, right? So you've now hit on a second psychological behavioral principle, and that's reciprocity. You've given something and you've put that person in a state of indebtedness to you. And you would hope then that how they repay you is by saying yes to your offer. So now let's look at, you've done that, you've given away, you're getting into your sales presentation now, and how do we now present the options in a way that is more conducive to generating a consumer decision? The first thing you want to do is you want to avoid choice fatigue. So small selections actually sell 10 times as much as large ones. So there was a study, I think it was Columbia University that did this experiment, and it was with jams. And they compared, it's like having a display with 24 or so different jams versus one with, say, 6 jams. What they found is that, yeah, more people stopped and looked at the 24 jams, but those that stopped for the 6 jams actually made 20 or 10 times more purchases. So they proved through this that small selections actually sell better than large ones. And the reason for this is that having to make several choices leads to less decision making because of fatigue. When you've got too many choices, you get brain fatigue and you don't want to do anything else. And that one of those other things might be actually making a decision. So you want to avoid that choice fatigue. The next thing you want to do then is group your products into only 3 or so categories. So good, better, best. And I'm sure 99% of you, that's what you do today. Just be conscious of why you're doing that. And it's for this reason. You want to actually limit choice fatigue. It's not because it makes it easy for your salespeople to remember. It's because it creates choice fatigue for the consumer. So you want to group that logically when you get your 3 groupings, and you want to categorize by efficiencies. And that's just the easiest way to do it. It makes the most sense. It's very logical. Again, I'm sure you do that today, but are you explaining that to the consumer is the point. So what you want to do now is actually explain how you've categorized this by efficiency to the consumer. So you're telling them that, hey, my good, better, best is differentiated because of efficiencies. And that is the easiest way to explain the category price differences to the consumer this way. And when you're doing this, then explain to them technically why the thing gets more efficient in the different classes. So it might sound something like this. Again, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. So we've grouped our products into 3 different categories. We have a good, a better, and a best, and they differ by efficiency. So in the good, what you would see here, if I were to take a furnace as an example, you're going to see a single stage furnace with a PSC motor. And then if I move to the better, you're going to see a 2-stage furnace with an EMC or ECM motor. And then if I went to the better or the best, you would then see a modulating gas furnace with an ECM motor. Let me explain to you the differences between those. So if I were to take good versus better right now, a single stage when operating, what ends up happening means that the heat exchanger has one level, and that's high. So the gas comes on, it's on full, and it stays on full until your house comes to temperature, right? So that gas is running on full until your house becomes comfortable, in essence. When I move to a 2-stage heat exchanger, what ends up happening is that, yes, the gas comes on at full first, but once the heat exchanger gets to temperature, it actually reduces the flame somewhat because you don't need as much energy to keep the heat exchanger hot. It's kind of like when you're boiling water, and once it gets boiling, you can turn down the heat and it'll stay simmering. Same principle in essence. So that saves you some money. You take that to the nth extreme, and now you've got a modulating gas valve. And what a modulating gas valve can do, that it can come down to even lower temperatures. In fact, it can actually start pulsing, where it actually turns off and on very quickly. And again, that saves you a little bit more energy. And that's how these categories are set up in terms of good, better, best. And that's how the efficiency gets better through the categories. So once you do that, you really disarm people of many of their technical questions, right? Because they have a clear understanding as to why your products are categorized the way they are, and why each product is different from the other in the other category. So that makes that process a lot easier to get through, as well as it makes it a lot easier for you to train the technical component of this to your salespeople if they don't have heavy technical backgrounds. This also then considerably simplifies the decision-making process for a customer, because now it's really black and white as to what choices they've got. So you'll want to move from this then to generating some small commitments, right? And this is getting the customer customer to make choices. So push the customer to make a choice in the product category. That's your first mission, and that's your first miniature commitment. So you've explained the categories for them. The first commitment you want to get from them is, hey, what category do you think you're in? You know, which one makes the most sense to you? Where do you see yourselves? This has, and I have a picture of a shopping cart here. This really is around that whole theory that a shopping cart that's empty, when you want to put you're making the decision to put your first item in that shopping cart, that's a big decision. It takes longer to make that first decision. Once you've got items in the shopping cart, then it's easier to actually add items to this. And that's what we're trying to do. Put another way, it's boiling the frog slowly, right? So I think a lot of times when we're doing our sales pitches today in the home, we go in there with an empty cart, and then it's, you know, we want to move right to fill the whole thing. So, you know, I've got these things, you want to buy one. Instead of starting to build this level of commitment with the customer. How you can start reinforcing that is then to start asking follow-up questions to reinforce that choice in category. So let's say that they choose the category better. You're going to want to reinforce that with them, that they made that choice. So you start asking some follow-up questions. Maybe it's this. Is there equipment in this category that you've already considered? Or maybe it's this. Will you be looking for other quotes for equipment in this category? Or it could be, are you interested in hearing about complete systems in this category and their efficiency advantages when working together? So those might just be some of those example questions you might use. And again, what you're doing here then is you're building up another one of the psychological principles, and that's commitment and consistency. You're getting somebody to commit to something so that later on in the sales presentation, you can present them with decision requests that remain consistent to that commitment. And if they were to go against those requests, that would be actually going against what they said they were. And that psychologically creates anxiety. So customers don't tend to do it. So the next step then is trying to use price decoys and bundles. What this does is this helps you to get higher average tickets when you're now within a category. And I'll explain that further right now. So what you want to do is actually carry a brand name that's considerably more expensive than other brands that you have in that category. So this is, let's again use the example of better. So when you're in the better category, have something that's really expensive in terms of a brand, stripped down, by the way, doesn't have any bells and whistles, no accessories is what I mean by bells and whistles. And that one is a lot more expensive than the others in that better category that you carry. What you'll want to do then is build up the ones that are cheaper with accessory bundles that get the price back up to the price of the expensive brand, right? So it's not that I'm asking you to sell, you know, less average ticket with using the contrast from the expensive one. I'm saying take the expensive one and then have the option of the less expensive one that comes with accessories, right? A bundled accessories that's the same price as the really expensive one. And that will feel like a bargain, even though the amount of cash flow that's going to come out of the customer's pocket is going to be the same. And this is easier to do inside a single category like better than trying to move people into the best category. If you can do that, great. Go ahead and do that. But what you're working against is that psychology of consistency and commitment, because the person didn't say that they were in that category. They said, well, I'm in the better category. I didn't tell you I was in the best category. So that's easy to say no to because there's no commitment to that. So they wouldn't be inconsistent by saying no to you by going to the best. So then it's better to actually try to find ways to solve for creating higher ticket items in the same category of, let's say, better in this example. That's easier to do because of that commitment and consistency principle. Now, bundling accessories, by the way, minimizes price pain. That's another thing that was found in some other research. And car companies use this very well. And the reason for this is that when you bundle stuff together, you can't really put a specific value to any one thing. It's harder for the customer to do. As you start adding items one by one, and the example for this is usually say, don't price things like you order sushi, right? Where you get, each piece has a price to it. Because of that becomes very painful for people, and it becomes less painful when you actually bundle all of that stuff together. So wherever you can, try to bundle your accessories together into packages. Maybe it's an ABC package, or it could be a package of, hey, this is our indoor air quality package. This one here is our comfort package, or this is our health package, whatever. But try to put them into bundles. It makes the price pain less felt. Then what you can do to end this is then actually provide some popularity statistics on the product you're pushing. This is a lot like the user stories, but you can say something as simple as this. When they look at a choice, you say, hey, you know what? 95% of the people that I sell to, this is the one they pick. That's the exact one they pick, the one that I'm showing you right now. They don't go for the really expensive brand name one. They're mostly picking this one because of the accessories that come with it at the same price. That's what 95% of the people that I sell to, this is the one they pick. That's a way of providing statistics in a manner where you don't need a whole bunch of user stories or testimonials or user ratings that you probably don't have about that particular product. You might have those ratings about your company, but you probably don't have those ratings around the product you're selling, right? And this is a way to develop something around that unlocks social proof. That's what all of this does here, is that you're showing the person that other people do this, so you should do it too. And that is the psychological behavior of social proof at work. Next I threw in here was know your product. This is a little less related to some of the psychology. However, it's something that I feel like we as an industry just don't do well as HVAC salespeople. And what you should know is know the brands you don't carry, and think about a car dealership. I'll bet you if you were to go into Ford and go to look to purchase a car, that person would know what Toyota was offering in that same class, and would be able to talk to you about why their product is either superior or the same, at least, or has better value or something. But they'd be able to reference against it. You wouldn't have to fill in the details for them about the Toyota offer in terms of what, let's say I was looking for an SUV. They would know the Toyota SUV that compares against the Ford SUV that you're looking at. And when you think about HVAC sales, by and large, maybe you don't do this as a company, and bravo for you. That's excellent. But I can tell you, having seen enough, not many do this well. So you really don't need to carry every brand. You just need to know about them. So do your homework and create a list before you go out on all of your sales calls. Get a list together. Take your product offering. Go take the brands that you don't carry. Look up the models of those brands in those same categories. Match them up and create a list so you at least know that, hey, this group of product is the same as the product I'm pushing, so that if a customer talks about that other stuff, you got a place to go. When you don't do this, you've got nowhere to go when a customer starts bringing up the fact that, hey, you don't carry the brand that I was really looking at. I was researching this one and I heard this one's better. How do you handle that objection if you don't know what those other competitive brands and models are? And it doesn't take a lot to do this. You just create a list around that. It'll pay back in spades, I'm telling you. By the way, it also shows authority, right? You again look like a real expert, right? An expert would know about those other brands and would know why the brands that you're trying to sell them are just as good as the ones that they were considering, if not better. So you really want to build up authority, and that again is why you will start looking like an expert to a customer, and they'll start believing what you're saying, and more importantly, do what you recommend. Finally, at the end of your sales process, you want to leave the door open after you've asked for the sale. So more specifically, ask for a favor, and this is really when the customer wants to think about it. So if they're going to get more quotes, or they want to talk to some other decision maker, but they don't want, for whatever reason, they don't want to make a decision before you leave, you need to ask for a favor, and you need to leave that door open. Before you do that, start by reinforcing the giveaways you delivered. Something around the, hey, well, I hope you enjoy, thank you for the time today. I hope you're able to use the information that I gave you around the efficiency and the size of your existing equipment, as well as the sizing of the equipment you're going to need when you do make a decision to actually replace it, whether or not you buy from me. Please do use that buying guide that I left there for you. It's a really good benchmark to really see if the people that you're talking to are reputable or not. Again, I hope you make good use of those. So now I've just reinforced the informational giveaways that I had given them. So I'm trying to create that indebtedness feeling to me. And then I ask for the first right of refusal. And what I mean by that is this. I'll say something like this. Understandably, you're going to go get some other quotes. That's the right thing. That's what you should be doing. It's a smart move. When you do get those other quotes, there's one thing, a favor actually, that I'd like to ask you. And that's that if you see one of those quotes that you really like, and you think it's something that's better than what I'm presenting you today, all I ask is that you please give me a call and let me at least try to match that price or do better. That's all I ask. So that's the favor, right? It seems a little bit innocuous, but because you've reinforced those giveaways, that person is going to want to act on reciprocity, right? So you're leveraging that influencing behavioral principle again. And that's a good way to end that conversation if you don't get the sale before you leave the home. So let's pull all that together and let's make that into a true system. So first, let's clearly outline the steps and their purpose. So step 1, introduce yourself and explain why you physically needed to be at the home. Step 2, deliver the sizing and equipment efficiency information to the customer before selling. Step 3, lay out your product categories. Now this should say step 4, but I've got it as step 5 because I made a typing error. But step 4, not 5, would be explain the difference in the categories using efficiency. Now step 5 would be get the customer to choose the category they're interested in. Step 6, reveal your price decoy and the bundled accessory compromise option. And the final step, so it's actually 7 steps, not 8. I made a typing mistake there. Ask for the sale or ask for a favor. And don't forget, call out the behavioral psychology at work in each of these steps. So this is how you're going to want to take, I know this seems light, but it's a good framework for you to take your existing sales systems or the existing approach that you're using to selling, and then starting to put them into these step blocks. And then by calling out for your sales team what psychology is at work in each of those steps. So authority in step 1 is an example, and reciprocity in the final step is another example. The reason why you want to call that out for them is that it allows them to ad lib or change the approach if they'd like, as long as they're getting to the same end in that they're applying the same psychology in each of those steps. So more often than not, what we see right now with a lot of the sales systems that are out there, it's either all or nothing, and they're so linear that a salesperson, once they get into them, if they get lost or they have a bad experience with it, that thing sits in the car while they go in the home and they come up with something themselves. You want to hope that if they do come up with some stuff themselves, that they're at least applying the appropriate psychology that each of the steps was trying to achieve. So what you don't want them to do is ad lib and not address that. Also, by having steps and knowing what each step is trying to accomplish, so I'll give you the example of number 1 again. I know that step 1 is trying to create credibility, trying to prove why I physically needed to be at the home. Well, then if I'm going to present this differently than I presented it in this presentation, say, I want to make sure that I'm using an example that's trying to achieve that same thing, and that's proving that I physically needed to be at the home, right? So that's how you'll want to train this. The other thing is when it's laid out in steps and you know what each step on its own is trying to do, then when you get into the nonlinear conversation that you really are going to get into with a customer, you're not going to get thrown off, right? You're not going to not know where you are. You can jump around in the steps, but because they're all contained in themselves around what they're trying to achieve, you still know what it is you're trying to do, right? And with a lot of the systems that I've seen, that's difficult, right? Once people start jumping around, it takes you off your linear game of maybe whether it's a binder or an iPad you're sweeping through to go through your sales system. If a customer forces you to jump what you had processed as being the next step, you can be lost and blank out there. You won't be, though, if you know what you're trying to accomplish in each one of these sections, right? So that should give you enough of a framework now to either make your system better or create a whole new system around some of these behavioral traits. And come up with your own examples. Again, I've just given a whole bunch of examples that are mine here, but I'm sure you as HVAC experts could probably do a better job of that, and get your technicians involved. This way, your technicians can actually get involved in the sales process, not by selling themselves, by actually helping you build this system then, and creating the proof points for all of the psychological effects that you're trying to elicit from your customers. So I hope that helped. That's really it for the sales system. I want to take this time now to tell you a little bit about us. That's me right there, Chris Corey. And we specialize in the HVAC space. I spent the last 9 years, my previous career at Reliance Home Comfort. For the past 4 or so, I headed up their marketing department. And I recently started this company, LiveTake, with an agency partner of ours to really specialize on the small to mid-size HVAC companies and to help them grow. So we are specialized in this space. It's all that we do. We don't market for anybody else. Because of the background, we've got some strong HVAC support relationships, know all of the senior people at all the major manufacturers. We also know a lot of specialty advertising and marketing agencies that have done a lot of work with or for us in the HVAC space. So there's a real good support network there to really drive out results in an efficient manner. We're also an HRAI member company because we want to show you that we are part of your professional community, and we want to get access to all of you, and we want you to have access to us. So that's why we are an HRAI member company. And don't know if many of you will be down in Windsor this week for the AGM. I'll be down there. Now, you know what I look like. Seek me out, and let's have a conversation. We're dedicated to helping contractors grow. That's what we're here for. And that's why our purpose is actually making marketing easy for this sector. Oftentimes it could be confusing, really understanding what it is you're paying for and what you're hoping to get out of it in the traditional agency relationship. We're trying to eliminate that. We've put a lot of the products into packages that have a list price, and you know exactly what you're going to pay. You know exactly what you're going to get out of it. With that segue, I would say, please go to our site and download our product catalog. It contains all of those packaged products. If you can't download it there, or you just want to send me a note, then do that and request just tell me that you want the catalog. I'm at ccorey, that's C-C-O-R-Y, at livetake.com. Just tell me you'd like to see the catalog. I'll send you a copy of it electronically. But we're hoping to make marketing easy. And we're also willing to work as a true partner. If you don't find with what we've got listed with our products and services what you're really looking for, if it still doesn't look like that's what your budget was wired to do, or you're not seeing the exact task that you were trying to achieve, then give us a call, contact us, and let's work with you. We can make things work, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to work with you as a partner, and we want it to work for your business. If it doesn't make sense for your business, then we don't want to sell it to you. So we want to work as a true partner. And then finally, we're a source of free support materials. So as evidenced, I hope, by this webinar, and I hope it was helpful, this stuff is free. And we're looking to do this on a weekly basis. So next week, we'll have another webinar, and I'm thinking next week we'll do it on trying to more effectively sell HVAC online. All right, so that'll be the next webinar. So stay tuned. Please don't unsubscribe from our list. That's how we're going to communicate with you, and we'll send out the invitation for the next webinar in a day or so. Also, in about an hour from the completion of this webinar, you'll be receiving an email with a link to the recorded version of this. So this has been recording the whole time. You'll get a link. It's posted on YouTube, so you'll get a link to that at the end of this, and then you can watch it at your leisure or share it if you like. So again, I thank you very much for the time. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week, and I hope to see all of you here next week for the next free webinar, and I hope we can help you grow your business. Thank you very much for your time. That concludes this week's webinar.